How are you doing? And I hope well, especially right now with all the craziness going on. But with that said, it's time to talk about serious stuff. Deer season's only 4 months away. So I figured it'd be great to take a break from all the negative news out there and let's just talk scopes for a little bit. And some of you might recognize this rifle. It's an ongoing project here on the channel. And I've been calling it the 2020 deer season rifle setup project. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. I'm setting it up for the 2020 deer season. And I'll leave some links below to previous videos, but so far, I fixed some accuracy issues I had going on with not enough clearance between the stock and the barrel. All right. And I also carried it to the range and tried a couple of different bullet weights in it to find out what bullet weight it wants. And today I just finished mounting the scope on here that I'm going to hunt with this season. And by my eye, this rifle's just about perfect. I mean, for me, this is about as good as it gets for a deer rifle. There's many rifles as good as this, but I don't know of any better. And I'm really proud of where this rifle's at now. But a big part of why this is such a great setup is the scope is matched to the rifle. And matching the scope to your rifle is something that can make almost any rifle a great deer rifle. So let me explain what I mean by that. Now this is a pretty good looking rifle, if I do say so myself. But let's face it, to us gun people, all rifles look pretty good. But there's things about this rifle that you just can't tell by looking at it. Right? You can't really tell how slim the profile is on this stock on the fore end and then the barrel. It's a featherweight barrel. You can't tell how slim the profile is on the back here of the stock. There's no cheek piece, a straight comb, and slim pistol grip on it. And the weight, right, it's on the lighter side. It's in between a normal featherweight and a super grade, which this is a Winchester Model 70. And the cartridge, it's in 7x57 or 7mm Mauser. Okay, well, let's talk about the scope for a second. All right, this is a Redfield scope, and it's on the lower end as far as scopes go, but it's a good scope, good glass. All right, and it's built like a traditional hunting scope. It's got a slim profile. It matches the rifle. It's got a 40mm objective lens. Okay, that's small. But it helps me get the scope down low as far as mounting it. 1-inch tube. It helps keep the bulk of weight of the scope down, along with the rings. And the magnification. The scope's in 3x9. Well, that matches the 7x57 perfectly. 7x57 is an intermediate range cartridge. 3x9 intermediate magnification. That it just goes together. And there's no extra non-needed features on this scope like lighted reticles and parallax adjustments. Now that doesn't mean that there isn't a place for all of the things this scope isn't or doesn't have. Okay, for example, the 30mm tube. Okay, if you've got a really heavy recoiling cartridge, like, African big game cartridge or something like that, you want extra weight on that rifle. Okay, so a bigger, heavier, bulkier scope with bigger rings, that would complement a really heavy recoiling rifle. You'd have less felt recoil. Okay, so that would work perfect for that. Extreme long range shooting, or if you're going to do extreme long range hunting. I've said before that weight helps you shoot more accurately. And that's just because if you've got a heavy rifle sitting there, gravity is going to want to help it just stay in place. It's not easily as affected by external forces, like a bad trigger pull. So extra weight helps you shoot more accurately. That's why most of the rifles for, extreme long range are really heavy rifles. It helps. Well, in that instance, adding a bigger, heavier scope and rings, that would complement that type of rifle. It just wouldn't complement this one. Okay, the bigger objectives. All right, if you're going to shoot in, hogs or something like that, and you're, in an open field in the dark or whatever, nothing wrong with the bigger objectives. Or if you just want them, hey, that's fine too. But for me, I don't need that on this rifle. I'm just shooting in legal light for deer. This is a deer rifle. The 40mm objective with the 1-inch tube and the coatings they have now, that's more than enough in low light conditions for deer. Okay, right at daybreak and sunset, I'm not going to have any problems in legal light. No problems. But again, there's times you might want that extra light or need it for what you're doing and the rifle you're using. All right, parallax adjustment. Parallax adjustment, you don't need that unless you're going to shoot long distances. And all that does is just correct for an optical illusion in the scope if the crosshairs aren't dead center in the scope. I'm not shooting long distances with this rifle and cartridge. I mean, I could stretch this out to 300 yards if I wanted to, but my maximum point blank range with the load I'm going to use in this rifle is probably going to come in around 250, 260 yards. So I'm not going to be shooting, I'm not even going to get close to 300. Well, you don't need parallax adjustment until after you get out past 300 yards. So that, I just don't need it on this scope. Same for a lighted reticle, just like I was saying about the 50mm objective. What I've got here, I mean, it works for, the light conditions I'm going to shoot in during deer season, legal light. And I really love the reticle in this scope. It's got the AccuRange reticle. All right. I love the circle in the center. I don't care about the ranging features on it. I couldn't care less about that. But that circle and the crosshairs, it helps me get a really good sight picture. So that's just something I really love about this particular scope. Plus, it's got a really fine crosshair in it, which I love because that helps precision. It's harder to shoot precisely with a thick crosshair, but you can see a really thick crosshair better in low light conditions. Well, that circle, that just adds more surface area and helps me pick up on the crosshairs right at daybreak and right at sunset. So that, again, everything on this scope works well together as far as giving me something I can use in those conditions, low light conditions, without having to go to the big objective and the 30mm tube. And the big thing I haven't talked about with this rifle and scope is the fit. All right, if you've seen my previous videos, you know I'm pretty obsessive over cheek weld. All right, well, by having the smaller objective and being able to drop this scope down further using lower rings, I have got an outstanding cheek weld on this rifle. It fits. Okay, and when you start getting into the bigger rings and bigger scopes, and I've said many times, as the scope comes up, the rifle comes down. All right, as you raise the scope, the rifle comes down, you lose your cheek weld. So that's when you get into needing to add something here to help get a good cheek weld. All right, that's not an issue with this rifle. All right, by going with this particular scope and these rings, I get that scope really low. So now I've got a perfect cheek weld as is without having to add anything. But there are rifles that it's worth having, the bigger tube and the bigger objective, if you need to add weight, things I was talking about just a second ago. And there's a lot of ways that you can build this up to get, build up your comb to get a good cheek weld. My last video was on a product just for that. All right, so if you have a rifle that the larger scope would complement, and you need that for whatever you're doing, just make sure you pay attention to your cheek weld. All right, so it's not anything you can't get around. But on this rifle, this setup, it just works out really good. All right, this rifle and scope right now, this setup for me is about as good as it gets. This is just about perfection. But that doesn't mean this would meet anybody else's wants and needs. There's a lot of great rifles and scopes out there. Just make sure you put some thought into matching your scope to your rifle so that you can get the best setup for you and what you're trying to do. I hope y'all enjoyed this. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs up. Give all shooting and hunting videos a thumbs up to let YouTube know you like shooting and hunting videos. And if you want to see future videos, including me carrying this to the range at some point and zeroing it, hit the subscribe button and notification bell if you want to be notified. And I think that about covered it. God bless. Have a good day.